Hello, everyone. This is Coach Oliver once again. Welcome to round number 8 of the Tata Steel Masters 2022. The best game of the round was between Shakriya Mame against Ramesh Babu Pragnananda. All right, here Mame played a very strong game against Prag. Prag lost his second game in a row. Yesterday he lost to Magnus. It's a bit heartbreaking for this young kid, but again, it's a valuable lesson for him. Let's go through the game. So Mame started with the English opening with c4. Prag went for e5. Now we have the reverse Sicilian. g3, c6. Okay, the main points, of course, to go to d5. Mame went for d4. Prag e4. If Prag captures, takes on d4. This is also possibility. Knight f6, bishop to g2, for example, and then d5. Yep. Let's say knight into f3, knight b d7, right? c to d5, bishop c5. So this is another line here. So after d4, Prag went for e4. Right. A little bit of space. We have a space grab on the fourth rank. Queen a4. All right, this is a surprising move. Here, Mame tries to surprise his opponent with queen a4. Normally, you don't move that queen early in the game, especially on that side of the board. Okay, the main point of queen a4, of course, is not allowing black to get this stronghold of the center with d5 and e4. Because if you look at the game after d5, with takes, you cannot take on d5 because there's a pin on the king on e8. But Prague actually played d5, takes, and then b5, queen b3, keeping an eye on b5, yes, because if you take on d5, there's going to take b5 check. Prague went for knight f6, bishop g5. Interesting move. Now, if let's say white captures on c6, knight takes c6, okay. Development versus material. Black sacrifices a pawn, but he has developed two minor pieces. So you look at white, it's not yet developed. It's only the queen. If you take one more pawn, let's say on b5, just bishop d7, there's a discovered attack with knight d4. If, let's say, the queen protects the d4 pawn, rook to b8, threatening rook to b4. If you stop, let's say, a with a3, there's knight a5 and knight to b3. Yes. So again, the development is more important. Don't be too greedy. So with that, Mame went for the pin with bishop g5, Prag queen a5 check. Another developing move with knight c3, b4, knight into d1, knight takes d5. Bishop into h3, another original approach by Mame takes on h3. Okay, here I would have liked black to play knight d7 to make sure that the knight on g1 is still there. Right? No extra tempo for white to castle. Right? It's still underdeveloped on g1. If, let's say, Mame plays rook c1, just h6, where is the bishop going? It could be d2. Bishops will go back to d2 and just bishop e7. Because if white captures on c6, just bishop to b7. You probably go back on c1, then knight f6. Yes. So now it takes time. At the same time, also, white has to regroup. Okay, take some time for him to castle. Here, you can go, for example, exchange rook c8, bishop c8. Now, if let's say he wants to go knight h3 and castles, it's bishop e6, threatening knight f4, discovered attack on the queen. Okay, that's important before the art of exchanging, because okay, it's a fair exchange. It's a fair exchange on h3. It's a fair exchange on h3, but then again, it allows the opponent to develop his knight and free up his king for castling. While if you block it with okay, while you block it, if you block it with knight d7, it will take some time for white to castle. If he goes back, for example, bishop g2, knight into f6, protecting e4, he will play knight h3, bishop e6. So the queen has to move. Okay, let's say the queen moved back to c2. There's b3 check, right? Okay, and if castles, for example, is able to castle, you can go for knight to f4 or even just rook c8, queen c2, c5. You get all the tempo. With bishop takes h3, White was very happy with bishop takes h3 because now knight takes, ready to castle, saves the queen on b3, no discovered check on b3 here. So knight d7, rook c1 first, h6 bishop d2, rook c8, f3, nice move. Hitting the e4 pawn, yes. The central pawn, hitting the central pawn. Control of the important e4 square, especially that it's a minor piece on d5, not a pawn. Okay, knight f6, knight hf2, reinforcing the attack on e4, right? The pawn and the knight. After takes, e4, nice. Although it was also possible to capture on f3 with the queen. Queen a2 and just castles, right? This is a problem here. Bishop e7, only then you go e4. If you play knight to b6, e5, yes. Where's the knight going? Let's just say knight into d7, then knight e3. Castles, for example, knight f5. If the queen goes back to protect the bishop, queen g4, threatening mate. Yes. g6, knight takes, bishop takes h6. And then knight e4, knight f6. This was a better version of what happened in the game because when Shaq, okay, what happens? He played e4, knight b6, he castled first, bishop to e7, knight into e3. Prague was a bit smart with queen a4, right? Because of course the queen is a superior attacking piece. So he's changing queen. Queen d3, follow the queen. Takes on b5. Okay, of course, this is a favorable endgame for white with the central pass pawns and the nature of this double pawn. Takes, knight takes, e5, central pawns, knight into d7, knight into f5, g6, rook c1, intermediate move, and also attacking the knight c8 with the skewer of the rook in h8. Knight into b6, knight takes e7. It was also possible to capture that pawn on h6. Takes e7. Okay, it's removing the guard, removing the defender of the b4 pawn. Knight takes e7, bishop takes into b4. Knight b5, bishop takes e7. I'm not too sure about bishop takes e7. I would have loved my bishop to be on the board, to keep the bishop on the board, just play bishop d6. And then, okay, the combination of the bishop and knight is much better than two knights. So if let's say king to d7 and knight e4. If you go rook c8, yeah, we'll see the takes and bishop c5. A combo, bishop and knight combo against two knights, yeah. And this is of course better for white with the central pawns. Well, anyways, Mame wants to simplify. Takes on e7. He doesn't want these two knights to protect e5 and e7. Okay, knight e4, h3, not allowing the connection of the pawns on g4, f6, rook c5. Okay, an interesting detail here. Yeah? This g5 move, it would have been better if you play f6 first. Because if let's say rook c5, as in the game, yeah, what is happening in the game, rook to d8, for example, right? If let's say you take on f6, knight takes f6, it's just fine. Now look at what happens when you insert g5. You play h3, right? f6. After rook c5, let's say rook d8 takes on f6. Knight takes f6. There is rook e5 check and king f7. Now this time there's rook f5 with a pin because the pawn is already on g5, not on g6. The pawns are the souls of the game, so we have to be careful with these pawn moves. Okay, you cannot fault Prague for playing g5 because he wants to connect this pawn to the f3 pawn, since this pawn is 2 steps away from promotion. But then again, with h3, it's only a waste move, this g5 one. It was important that that pawn, again, that pawn takes away f5. Yeah, we see the difference, rook c5, rook d8, takes. If you check, for example, this king f7, there's no rook f5 with that pawn on g6. That's the small detail somewhere. So with g5, Mame was happy with h3, rook c5. Now you cannot play rook d8 again. Rook d8 you cannot play because it takes on f6, rook e5, rook f5. You lose a piece. So Prague probably thought about that mistake and he played f5, knight d2, hitting the pawn in f3. And this is now a very scary connected central pass pawns. b4, king f2, in the endgame, activate the king, centralize the king. Knight into b6, rook c6, threatening the h6 pawn. Okay, if let's say a black attacks the defender of d4, this knight h4, right? Because you cannot play rook takes d4, that's knight takes f5, double attack. If king d7, the knight protects the rook, so it's not possible. So g4, you may think that, oh, I can take the d4 pawn, but no, yeah, because knight can go h4, and it's a that's an indirect protection of the d4 pawn, this knight h4 move. Okay, rook c8, rook takes c8, simplify, two connected pawns on d4 and e5, h4 breaking the connection of the pawns from h, g, and f. Takes, this is a backward pawn, potential target, knight into e1, knight b6, knight g2. It was also possible to play knight c2 here, right? a5, knight e3. This is probably a better version of what happened in the game. And if let's say king goes to e6, just b3, right? Restricts the knight. Restriction of the knight. And if knight, where is the knight going? Let's say knight goes to c8. Now you go knight g2. Yeah. Knight goes to e7, you have knight f4 check. This is a much better version. And then king e3, and then d5. Because here it allows a little bit of a tricky situation where Prague had to play knight a4. He hits the pawn, you push b3, he has knight c3, hitting a2. Yes. This is an unnecessary counterplay. So knight e3, knight takes b2, knight takes f5. Although Shak might have calculated that he has this outside pass pawn. The principle of two weaknesses, this outside pawn and also the central pawns, right? And he calculated that the king is much faster to this pass pawn here. So takes, knight takes a2, just h5. If you push this pawn, just king d2, because b2, you have king c2. Just in time. The king arrives in time to protect the promotion. Just in time. Pragnananda went for knight c3, king d2. Be careful, you cannot push h6. This is a big blunder because b3. Right? It's going to be a draw because the knight protects the promotion square. So king d2, because you cannot push b3, just takes the knight. After knight e4 check, king c2. You always have to be careful. You have a pass pawn, but you also have to take care of the opponent's pass pawn. Sense the danger from there. All right. This game shows Mame Jarv's experience. Yeah, it's more of the experience, and Prague is still lacking that one. Yeah. Although these losses, losing against Magnus the other day and losing against Mame Jarv today, will only help Prague, yes, to become a stronger player. These are valuable lessons for this young kid, learning from his mistakes here and how to play with, because this is different. This this Carlsons, the Mamijarovs, the Giris of the game, they're the elite. Yeah, they are our elite, and it's a different league. Yeah, they're playing in a different league, so they can they can play around with the experience that they have. Yeah, they can play anything on the board. Yes, they understand all these little details. Yeah, little nuances of the game, and that's what you need to learn also. Yes. Here, Mamijara played this uncommon queen a4, bishop h3, just to surprise Prague. Yeah, playing out of theory and play just playing chess. But with this experience, it's only helping Prague. Yeah. There's more to gain here. Losing is part of the experience. All right, so that's about it. Congratulations to Shaq. Shaq now is tied for the lead with Magnus after round number 8. Okay, tomorrow will be round number 9. Again, it's 5 p.m. UAE time and 9 p.m. Manila time. And I will see you there for the highlights of that game. Right, this is Coach Oliver. I'm signing off. Bye bye.